This is Grunt to Groan, sales lessons learned from professional wrestling. Coming to you from the fabulous Delaware Wrestling Thunderdome, I'm your host, Benjamin Burrows.
I am one voice that stands alone. I am one choice to man the throne. Stand guard and take shots, give it all I got. All I got is this microphone. I am
Reach for the sky, boy.
Hey, everybody, this is Billy Gunn. Hey, it's me, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart.
This is the Birdman Coco Beware.
In Macho Madness, yeah. Growing, and more seductive than sex.
To me, they are the greatest tag team in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt and Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks.
Hey, this is the NWA World's Heavyweight Wrestling Champion, the National Treasure, Nick Holden.
Woo! It's the Nature Boy. Woo!
While you may see me out there shaking my ass, you can guarantee on May 25th, I'll be kicking it too.
This is Tito Santana, WWE Hall of Famer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one of the founding fathers of All In, the executive vice president of All Elite, Cody!
And what you gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest arms in the world destroy you?
Hi, this is Glasgow, Delaware Kit Kat. I never, ever listen to Grunt to Groans by Benjamin Burrows.
Well, there you have it. Nobody listening to Grunt to Groan, sales lessons learned from professional wrestling. Nobody but you. And you are a sales professional. And as a sales professional, you are the great American thunder on which this nation rolls, because nothing happens until something is sold, until you get out there and you sell it. And this is Grunt to Groan, sales lessons learned from professional wrestling. I'm your host, Benjamin Burrows. We are coming to you from the fabulous Delaware Wrestling Thunderdome, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to follow us here at Grunt to Groan, sales lessons learned from professional wrestling. Hey, don't forget, you can reach me at greatamericanThunder@gmail.com. I read and respond each and every email that is sent to me. I have no filters on that email address and no screeners on that email address. That's greatamericanThunder@gmail.com. You can also support the Grunt to Groan podcast by purchasing the book, Grunt to Groan, Sales Lessons Learned from Professional Wrestling. You can do that on all the .coms, Walmart.com, BarnesandNobles.com, Amazon.com. If you've already purchased the book, I want to thank you for that. And if you would be so kind, please go on to Amazon.com and write us a review. Every time we get a review written, it enhances our position within Amazon.com. So please take the time, if you would, and write a review of the book, hopefully something positive. And don't forget, you can purchase our merchandise on Amazon.com. We have the officially branded Grunt to Groan merchandise, the hoodies, the T-shirts, all there on Amazon.com. Just type in the search bar, Grunt to Groan, sales lessons learned from professional wrestling, and all of that comes up. Anything that you can purchase helps us fund this podcast and some of the other activities that we're trying to do with this whole Grunt to Groan project. If you'd like to advertise on Grunt to Groan, sales lessons learned from professional wrestling, that's right. If you would like to reach the tens and tens of followers that we have on this elite podcast, email me at Grunt to Groan, sales lessons learned from professional wrestling. Every time I say that, Dave the Ray's ears, the tips of them get very, very red. And we do have another sponsor for the program, one that Dave the Ray is unfamiliar with. So here they are.
Black Label Beer. It's the premium brew at the popular price. Enjoy the fete, take our advice. Get Carling's Black Label. Carling's Black Label Beer. Label, Black Label, Label.
Yes, our brand new sponsor there, Black Label beer. No. Actually, I pulled that offline like I did the Roto-Rooter commercial last week, and just trying to see if I can't get Dave the Ray riled up a little bit. But if you would like to reach the tens and tens of followers here and advertise, email me at greatamericanthunder@gmail.com. Hey, some sad news from this week. A lot of you may know the actor Luke Perry. He was on Beverly Hills 91210, I think it was, back in the day. I remember my wife used to watch it all the time, and was on several Lifetime movies, and I think I saw him on one of the Medea movies too, I think. But Luke Perry, unfortunately, suffered from a stroke and passed away this week. So I want to send condolences out to the Perry family. This is touches our community of professional wrestlers, because Luke Perry's son, Jungle Boy, just signed a contract with All Elite Wrestling. He's an up-and-coming professional wrestler. So just want to send condolences out to Jungle Boy and the Perry family on the loss of Luke Perry. And keep the family in your prayers and your thoughts this week. And also want to thank everyone who took the time out of their busy week to respond to our podcast last week, where we addressed hiring sales professionals, the worth of sales professionals over the age of 50. I had a lot of great response to that podcast, so I thank you very much. And our community of sales professionals that are over the age of 50 bring a wealth of knowledge, experience, and a willingness to want to train and to educate younger sales professionals on this craft and this industry of professional sales. And good sales professionals don't become sales professionals by happenstance. They come into this looking for a career. And a lot of sales professionals over the age of 50 have been reporting back to me that sales organizations aren't even looking at them as possible hires. So if you manage a sales organization and you're looking for good qualified sales professionals, please do not discount the sales professionals who are over the age of 50. Now, I want to jump into the podcast this week with a post that I saw on LinkedIn that comes from the National Sales Executive Association, and it's entitled Sales Statistics. And I believe in numbers. I believe in the more calls you make, the more chances for closing you have, the more successful you will be as a sales professional. And you'll hear some of the old-timers like myself say that sales is nothing more than a numbers game. And that's what these sales statistics prove. And I thought they were worth reviewing and talking about here on the Grunt to Groan podcast. So this comes from the National Sales Executive Association, entitled Sales Statistics. And here they are. 48% of salespeople never follow up with a prospect. Now that statistic amazes me, because following up with a prospect today is a lot different than it was 20 years ago when I was right in the middle of my sales career. And much different than 30 years ago, 35 years ago when I started my sales career. You know, following up with a prospect is as easy as emailing them. It's as easy as taking 20 seconds and emailing your prospect. So this number astounds me that 48% of salespeople never follow up with a prospect. 25% of salespeople make a second contact and then stop. So 25% of salespeople only make 2 attempts with a new prospect. 12% of salespeople only make 3 contacts and stop. So as you can see, the numbers are cut in half from 48 to 25 to 12. Only 12% of salespeople make 3 contacts, and then they stop with a prospect. And only 10% of salespeople make more than 3 contacts. So I was at a conference a couple years ago, and one of the high-ranking officers in federal procurement was speaking. And he was telling us that most EMS chiefs, when they surveyed them with the Veterans Administration, would not do business with a potential vendor or sales professional until they had made their 7th contact with them. And the reason for that was EMS chiefs said, if they will make 7 contacts with us just to gain our business, then I know they'll be around after we award them our business. In order to be successful in the profession of sales, we have to be persistent. Now, in my book, I had the privilege of interviewing Diamond Dallas Page. And Diamond Dallas Page is a former world heavyweight champion. He also is a very successful businessman. He is the founder and innovator of DDP Yoga, which has become very, very successful. And interviewing Diamond Dallas Page, I found out that this is a man of persistency. This is a man with a never say die attitude. For example, in professional wrestling, it took him, as he describes it, 8 years to become an overnight success. Quote from the book, Grunt to Groan. If you took 1988 when I started, it only took 8 years for me to become an overnight success. So it took Diamond Dallas Page 8 years to become successful in professional wrestling. And again, he's a former 3-time world heavyweight champion. One of the best talkers, still one of the best talkers in the business. 8 years. He talked about in the book that when he decided to go into professional wrestling, that everyone thought he was crazy. He said that Michael PSA's still with the WWE, Michael Hayes, was with the Fabulous Freebirds, that he laughed him out of the building, that he thought he was effing crazy. Greg Gagne was the same way. Greg Gagne was a promoter and a booker for WCW. And Greg Gagne told him he didn't have it. He didn't have the marketability. He didn't have the skills. He didn't have the creativity. He couldn't talk well enough to be a professional wrestler. Now think about that. Diamond Dallas Page is one of the greatest talkers in the business. And Diamond Dallas Page's theory was, I'm not going to prove people wrong. I'm not going to prove people right. I'm going to prove me right. I'm going to prove to the world that I was right. So when we talk about not following up with our prospects, and we talk about the fact that, we give up on them, there's something to be learned from Diamond Dallas Page. And you don't have to go too far into hearing any interview on him. DDP Yoga. A lot of people think DDP Yoga was an overnight success. It wasn't. Dallas Page told me in our interview it took 10 years and $500,000 to make DDP Yoga a success. Here's Dallas Page from our interviews.
It only took me 10 years to get people to get it, and a lot of it had to do with the never say die attitude. Never give up. And I found when I was a kid, I'm going to be in the nightclub business. I'm going to run nightclubs. My buddies were like, yeah, right. I'm like, no, dude, I want to do that. And by the time I was 23, I was doing it. And I did it on and off right up until I decided I was going to be a wrestler. Actually, I tried it wrestling when I was 22. I should say it started there. I tried to go wrestling when I was 22. It didn't work out for me. And I was offered an opportunity to run this little rock and roll bar that had a restaurant upstairs. And that was my introduction into that world. I'd already been working in it since I was 17. But now I got an opportunity to run my own place, and it moved on from there. And I never went back to wrestling, and I always felt like I blew it because wrestling blew through the roof in the 80s, and I should have been a part of it. And while I was still running this big-ass nightclub that I owned a piece of in Fort Myers, Florida, I made a videotape of me and a bunch of guys who wanted to be wrestlers, and I sent it to the AWA. 2 weeks later, they called me. Like, if I would have known how many tapes get sent in, I never would have wasted my time. But ignorance is bliss in a lot of scenarios. And next thing you know, they want to bring me in for a tryout, and I got to tell them, well, listen, none of those guys can wrestle. They're like, what? And I go, well, why'd you send the tape? And I go, well, because it's like a secret society. I don't know how to get in, so I just made up some shit and, got some guys who want to be wrestlers, and, I'll always say, fake it till you make it. Like I heard a reverend say when I was a young kid, and I loved some of those reverends, just the way they talked. And one of them said, the quickest way to get there is to act like you already been there. And I developed that philosophy through my life, along with something I heard Zig Ziglar say when I was 22. He said, you can get whatever you want as long as you help enough people get what they want.
There's Diamond Dallas Page from our interview for the book Grunt to Groan, Sales Lessons Learned from Professional Wrestling. It took him 8 years to be an overnight success in professional wrestling, 10 years to be an overnight success in business. 3-time World Heavyweight Champion and a WWE Hall of Famer. I'm not out here to prove you wrong. I'm out here to prove me right. That's his motto. Now, what's to be learned from that? What's to be learned from Diamond Dallas Page and this information provided by the National Sales Executive Association? What's to be learned for a sales professional is that there is no more value on any aspect of your sales game that you can place than on persistency. To keep nailing away, to keep digging away, to continually stay in contact with your prospects and your clients. So again, from the National Sales Executive Association, here's some very uplifting statistics that we should take into consideration. 2% of sales are made on their first contact. That is correct. You have a 2% chance of closing the deal on your very first contact. 3% of sales are made on the second contact. Only 3%. 5% of sales are made on the third contact. 10% of sales are made on the fourth contact. 80% of sales are made on the 5th to 12th contact. 80%. If you want to increase your close ratio, you need to be persistent with the prospects that you're working. You can't call on them twice and then give up. You can't call on them 3 times and give up. You have to stay persistent. The past 2 weeks, this point has been proven. I have been chasing some business for the better part of a year. Staying in contact. Presenting more product. And in the past 2 weeks, I've had no less than 4 clients that I've been chasing for a year allow me the honor and the privilege to sell them product. Persistency. It took Diamond Dallas Page 8 years to be an overnight success in professional wrestling. It took Diamond Dallas Page 10 years and $500,000 to be successful in business. So as a sales professional, if you want to increase your close ratio, be persistent. If you don't get the business after the 3rd call, then you're not out to prove the customer wrong. You're out to prove yourself right. You'll get that business on the 4th. And if not the 4th, the 5th. If not the 5th, the 6th. If not the 6th, the 8th. If not the 8th, the 10th. If not the 10th, the 12th. That's my message for this week. I want to thank you for taking the time to follow us here on Grunt to Groan, Sales Lessons Learned from Professional Wrestling. Again, you can reach out to us by emailing me at greatamericanthunder@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Great American Thunder, at Real Ben Burrows, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to work LinkedIn. Connect with me at Benjamin Burrows. It has been an honor and it has been a privilege to have you listening to us. And remember, you are the Great American Thunder on which this nation rolls, because nothing happens until something is sold, until you sell something. So quit listening to me and get out there. Sell something.
I am one voice that stands alone. I am one choice to man the throne. Stand guard and take shots. Give it all I got. All I got is this microphone.